Okay, it is my privilege and my honor to introduce Nathan Ricks. Like Tyler mentioned, not only is he my father-in-law, but he's also a very successful entrepreneur in his own right. And so we're very privileged, very grateful to have him here today. Nathan Ricks, he's an expert in many things. Maybe a couple of those. I'm going to dumb this bio down really quite a bit and let him tell you more about it. But network marketing with Nuskin, has a lot of experience with them, done that for many years with Nuskin, and has done an incredible job with them, changed lots of lives there. Also has a company called Stack Real Estate, and they do commercial real estate across the state and other places, and also does some solar ventures where they sell solar power to municipalities, cities surrounding, and he has those in various locations and places. But most importantly, Nathan is most proud of his family. Been married to his wife Joyce for years and years now, and 4 beautiful daughters, one of which that I'm married to, so I'm super grateful for that. We just added the 13th grandchild, my wife and I, we added the 13th grandchild for Nathan and Joyce, who came Wednesday night, and so families always come first for him. Family has always been the most important thing for Nathan, which is why he's built what he's built and done what he's done, so he can affect positive change with them and with people around him. And with no further ado, we'll let Nathan come up. Thank you.
All right. I apologize in advance. That's probably a little loud. I've got this scratchy throat, so don't worry, it's coronavirus. There'll be no problem. You guys will live through it probably. Anyway, thanks for being here and spending a few minutes. I'm honored you'd come and listen to me. I'm just a business guy that doesn't have any particular expertise probably in anything. I've tried to learn about a lot of different things. In my house that I grew up in, my mom and my dad both had college degrees, which was probably a little interesting in that day and age. But my dad was an urban planner. He worked for the Salt Lake County Planning Department for most of his career. My mom taught junior high school. And so I came from a home where it was pretty much go to school, get a good job, and then just keep your head down. And nobody ever talked about being an entrepreneur or taking a lot of risk. I remember after I had got hired at AT&T, they were deregulating the Bell telephone system, which was way before your time. But AT&T used to own everything, all the phone lines in the whole country, and it was a monopoly. And the government broke them up into little baby Bells, and then AT&T was the mothership on top, and they got deregulated. And Bell Labs had developed something called Unix operating system, and it had just been something that was running the phone company and the phone system in this country. And finally they commercialized it, and so I went and got a job with them. And I worked there about 18 months, 20 months. And every time I would go out and hit my quota that was set, and I would exceed my quota, then they'd ring my phone, and my boss would say, come to my office, and they would say, you're doing so good, we're going to chop your area and raise your quota. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a promotion, because he was so enthusiastic. And then I walked out and I thought, what does that mean? Chop my area and raise my quota. Oh, that means I get to sell twice as much with half the customers. I get to work really hard. And they did that to me twice in about the first year. And so at about 18 months, when they did it the last time, I walked in and said, I'm done. You guys do not know how to motivate salespeople. You're just trying to squeeze all the blood out of the turnip. I'm out of here. And that really cemented my entrepreneurial career. I learned I wasn't cut out for a big company. And I got a call from like the number 3 guy in San Francisco. Now, son, don't be hasty here. You know, you got a great future in this company. And I was like, I don't think so. And so I left. And I went and started doing some real estate. That worked okay for a while. And I thought I'd just show you with a few slides, kind of walk you through some of the things that I've done. I've done a lot of different things, tried a lot of different things. Got a job with a company called Unibase, and I did go into prisons, and I did teach inmates how to do data entry, and they let them do the fishing licenses and the hunting licenses for the state, and it was a lot cheaper data entry, and the prisoners got to learn something and so forth, and then they would never let them do the tax returns. They were worried about that. But anyway, it was really interesting, and so I spent some time in prisons trying to get that thing to go and build that up, tried a lot of different things. I can't even remember all the things that I tried. A lot of things that would fail. And I think that's probably one thing you've all probably learned a lot, is that you're going to fail if you're an entrepreneur, right? I mean, if you want the really safe, steady life, you can go get a job at AT&T and just keep your head down, and they'll fund your retirement plan a little bit. You'll have good health care, and life will be what it's going to be. And a friend of mine told me a long time ago, he said, if you're really, really careful in life, nothing ever really good or really bad will happen to you. And that's not the life of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur's life is like the high highs and the low lows. And that's just the way it is. So anyway, we can jump into a few of these and we can talk about them as we go. So my daughter, Jenny, Landon's wife, told me I should do this presentation like this. So I've always been really big on goal setting. And when I was young, I listened to a tape from a guy that was with the Success Motivation Institute in Waco, Texas. And I can still hear the twang in his voice. And he talked about writing down whatever you wanted to have in your life. And so I did that. When I was 14 years old, I wrote down just all this stuff. And he said, don't worry that you don't know how you're going to do it, or you don't have the money to do it, you don't have the smarts to do it, you don't have the education to do it. He goes, forget all that stuff. Just go crazy. Make this list of whatever you want to have, be, do, see, experience in your life. And so I did that then, and that was my first shot at goal setting. I also had a goal. I wanted to play professional football like most young guys do at my age, and you're in that day and age. And I wanted to be a Minnesota Viking, the purple people eaters, they called them in those days. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. But I was 6 feet tall and 120 pounds. So I had to jump on the pad to get the grocery store door to open. I was that skinny. And so what happened is I met these guys and they said, you got to eat everything and you got to start lifting weights and you need to write down some goals. So I put this little 3x5 card and taped it on my dresser in my bedroom, and I had a line down the middle. On one side it was bench press, and the other side was body weight. And I would just cross them off in 10-pound increments, as I got stronger and bigger. And so I actually put on 100 pounds in high school. So I went from 120 to 220, and I finally did get recruited to play at BYU, and I never went on to the pros, but played with guys who did, like Jim McMahon and Mark Wilson and some of these old guys that you probably don't even know. So anyway, I learned from that experience some really important life lessons. And one was that if I wrote it down and I read the goal every day and I took direct action every day, that it could happen. And I learned that if I could change the shape of my body that dramatically, that I could pretty much do anything. If I wrote it down, read it every day, and put my mind to it and focused on it, that it was literally like the guy said from Waco, Texas on that tape, it was kind of like magic. So a lot of work goes into the magic, but I learned you can really do pretty much anything you want to do. So when this was 1991, I was 31 years old. I had just been involved in Nuskin for a couple of years, and I read this book, and this guy said, design your whole life. And so I wrote these goals for the year 2050 when I'll be age 90. And I made them in 5 areas. Okay, so I just started writing these things down. And I did them in the order of importance to me. And so that was my end of life goals. I don't know, you probably have never met anybody who's written down what life's going to be like when they're 90. But I did. And then I broke it down and I said, okay, when I'm 50, it'll be, to this level. When I'm 40, it'll be this level. When I'm 30, it'll be this level, 31 basically. And that's what I wrote down. So I talked about this, I didn't ever finish college. I went to work, went on an LDS mission, came back, decided, okay, I'm going to work. I don't need to finish school. I'm just going to go work. And so I went working, ultimately went to this company, Unibase, where I did the prisoner thing, trying to teach them data entry. And then I went to AT&T itself, and I told you that didn't work out too good. Went to real estate, so we started this little company called Liberty Investment Company, Sandy, Utah, little teeny office, and we're just out there tracking all the notices of default in Salt Lake County, and that's the first notice that gets filed on a homeowner when they haven't made their mortgage payment. And so we started tracking these homes and seeing which ones had some equity left in them above the mortgage, and we started going to the courthouse steps and buying these houses. And we'd buy like 50 a year. And we'd go into these houses and rip out the countertops and the carpet and put on a new countertop, new carpet, paint the house, and we'd sell it and make $10,000 or $15,000 bucks. And so there was me and two other guys, and so that's what we did. Bought my first office building there. I was driving down the street, saw this building sitting there vacant for sale. It was actually a building that the Unibase guys used to own that I had worked with before. And so I knew the building a little bit. And so I cut a deal to buy this building for $240,000, not knowing, no clue what I was doing, but I just was taking action. So I put this building under contract and kind of went and got money from a couple people and closed this building. Then I'm thinking, okay, great, now what do I do? You know, I need to lease the building or I need to sell the building. And I was just really praying like crazy, like I need help. I need to know what I'm going to do here because I've got like this big problem. I've got this building, I got to figure out what to do. And literally like a lightning bolt, this inspiration just hit me in the head with the name of a company I'd never even heard of. And so I looked him up on the phone book and I called him, and the guy goes, wow, this is really fortuitous. We're looking for a building in that area. I was like, are you kidding? So I sold that building to that guy like 60 days later, made $160,000 on the one transaction. Then I was kind of hooked on real estate, right? So I'm liking real estate, and there's the little building. They still have it today, Challenger Schools, right? And so then after that, I went into network marketing. The real estate was good, and we were making okay money, making $100,000 a year, which was pretty good money back in the mid-'80s. And but I wanted a lot more than that, so I started thinking I want to do something else. And my wife's brother recruited me into Nuskin. And Nuskin was about 5 years old at the time, and most people said, that deal's over, you know, that's already too old. You need to like focus on something else. And I thought, I don't think so. And so I dug into Nuskin, and I really got serious about it, started working that. That was in 1989. And so I'm 29 years old. I've bounced around. I've done like 4 or 5 different things, trying to land on my feet, trying to figure out what to do, failing, you know, not very fun sometimes. And so got into network marketing, and this just seemed to fit for me. You know, it was kind of like, you know, one of those things. I figured out that people that had ADD did really good at network marketing because they couldn't focus very long on anything else. So I started recruiting people with ADD, just kidding. But a lot of them were ADD, and they were pretty good at it. So I learned about leverage. And what's leverage? If you look at people who actually make money or make a lot of money, they all employ leverage of some kind. The biggest percentage of people leverage the financial markets. They're money managers. They run mutual funds or hedge funds. And they leverage the money of lots of people, or a lot of employee retirement plans or state pension plans or school pension plans. And they take all this aggregated retirement money that these people are charged to invest and get a decent return on it, so people have something when they retire after putting in their 40 years and doing their work, right? And so most people do it that way. What Nuskin allowed me to do was leverage people, leverage the efforts and time of people. And the really good ones could do really well, and the ones that weren't that good didn't do very good. Nobody ever got hurt. Nobody ever lost any money. Nuskin's a great company, and they would always say, well, if you ended up buying product and you don't want it, you can't sell it, that's fine, just send it back, we'll give your money back. So there was no risk for anybody to lose money or get hurt financially, and that can happen in bad network marketing companies for sure. But Nuskin's not one of those. They're a great company, they're publicly traded, they do a good job. And so I started working in that, and I just started recruiting, and over the course of 30 years, I retired last year officially from traveling and speaking and training for Nuskin. And I'm independent. I didn't work for the company. I wasn't an employee. I just got paid on what I could make doing the business. And so we ended up doing really well, and we rode Nuskin's expansion from one country to 54 countries, and I traveled all over the world for many years. I've got millions and millions and millions and millions of miles on airlines and stuff, been to 50, 60 countries, met a lot of great people, and that turned out really well for us. And we were able to make millions of dollars doing Nuskin. And so what I didn't want to do is put money in the market, because I hated the stock market, didn't understand it, and seemed like it was kind of rigged, for me at least. And so I didn't understand it, so I went back to what? To what I knew. I went back to real estate. And I just decided, all right, I'm going to start figuring out how to buy some property and see if I can either buy some buildings or do something. And so I started putting money that I was earning. Nuskin was kind of like my capital generator. So what I used to create cash so that I could have capital to go play the game of real estate in a bigger and better way. And so that's what started happening. During Nuskin, I did another thing. So I was selling vitamins with Nuskin, and I always thought, you know, everybody sells all these vitamins, but nobody knows if they really do anything. And so one day I'm up early, I'm in my office at our house, and my phone rings, and on the end of the line is this guy who's named Robert McLean. I've never met this guy, right? And so he calls up and he goes, "Is this Nathan Rick?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm Robert McLean. I'm a scientist at the Center for Biomedical Optics at the University of Utah." He said, "So I understand you sell a lot of vitamins." I said, "Yeah, that's right." And I said, "Now, who are you? Why are you calling me?" And so he started to explain that they had invented a device that could non-invasively, with a little low-powered laser, measure antioxidant status in living human beings. And the only way you could measure antioxidants in people and see if any vitamins were actually getting into their tissue was to cut off about a 4 square inch patch of skin off their body and grind it up and feed it through an HPLC machine, high pressure liquid chromatography. And so they could then analyze every single element that was part of that skin, and they could tell if vitamins actually were getting there. Well, that's pretty painful. Nobody wants to give up 4 inches of skin every 60 days to find out if their supplements are working, right? And so I thought, wow, this is interesting. So I went up to the University of Utah, actually to the Huntsman Cancer Center, and these guys were testing cancer patients to see if there was a correlation between low antioxidant saturation in their tissue and having cancer. And so they were doing all these studies there. So I went to the Huntsman and I got scanned, and I ended up having the highest score that anybody had ever scored on this machine. And they go, "Oh, no, something's wrong with the software. Let's do that again." Same score again. They go, "No, I can't be. Let's do it the third time." So they do it the third time, and I eat pretty good. I don't go to McDonald's or anything. I eat pretty healthy, right? And I take the vitamins, the supplements. So that was like validation for me that they were probably pretty good products. And so I all of a sudden got this idea. I'm thinking, man, if this is true, and these guys can prove it in 30 seconds, you know, that whether you're eating healthy or not, whether you've got enough nutritional protection or not, and nobody in the world knows it, and everybody's buying billions of dollars of vitamins and nobody knows if they work, I mean, this could be pretty big. So what did I do? I get this idea, and I decide I'm going to buy this technology from the University of Utah, and I'm going to sell it to somebody, or I'll start my own company with it, and then I can prove my vitamins work and nobody can prove anything. I got a monopoly. I can win big on that one, right? And so I go out and I negotiate to buy this technology for $10 million. I don't have $10 million, but I signed the contract anyway. I'd come up with the money, right? So anyway, I ended up doing this, and Nuskin ended up buying it. And they didn't want me to leave and go do my own company, so I kind of leveraged that a little bit. And so I got stock in their company, and I got some cash for selling this to them. And they ended up investing about $100 million developing the technology, which would have been hard for me to do. Long term, I probably could have figured it out, but it was simpler to stay there. And so that was another fairly good win to accumulate some capital that I could then do it. And I had to go make that thing work. I had to get it deployed worldwide, and so we did. And today, Nuskin has over 20 million scans in their database. They know more about human nutrition in different countries around the world than probably anybody, which helps them make better products and so forth. But that was a pretty good win for us. So I took some of this money and I wanted to get back into real estate. So Mill Rock Park was a little property in east side of Salt Lake Valley, next to Big Cottonwood Canyon, you know, where the ski resorts are and everything. And so a friend of mine came to me and said, "Well, I've got 3 acres here, but we need to buy another 20 acres here." And so we had like, I don't know, 6 or 7 landowners, went out there, bought all this land, figured out how to do it. I used some of our money to do that. And then we ended up having to raise this money to buy all this land. And so in a couple of weeks, we raised $14 million from just friends and family, scratching and digging, trying to get all the money together. So we got that done, and we didn't even have any approvals. That's like insanity. It's like putting a gun to your head to invest that much money and not even have the approvals to build something so no, you can get your money out of it. So that's how dumb we were. But we were like motivated and anxious, right? So we decided just to do it. Took 2 years to get the approvals. The mayor of the city sued us to stop it because the city council approved it and he didn't like it. And that took time and money in court, and we finally got that done. And so we built it. We didn't know how to build it. We hired a guy that used to work with my father, at the planning. He was a developer, and my dad knew him from planning, so we hired him because we didn't know what we were doing. And we built 500,000 square feet, 4 buildings, like Class A campus, became one of the nicest properties in Utah, and won best of state and everything else. And so that's the park. So these 4 buildings, and it's on this big hillside, so we had to figure out how to loop this road all the way around and have it not be too steep and have everybody get to their buildings. Built this huge parking structure, buried it in the mountain, you know, and so built that one first, then this one, then that one, then that one, and they filled up really fast. And we ended up selling that ultimately because we were stupid again, and we didn't do the right thing on our leases, so we ended up selling everything except this little piece here, and this was on this hillside, and so we put a Hampton Hotel in here that we still own that one. But the rest of it we ended up selling to a big REIT, real estate investment trust out of Newport Beach, California. Sold it for $134 million back, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So we didn't want to pay taxes on all the gain. We had pretty good gain on that. So you can do a 1031 exchange, right? You guys all know what a 1031 is? You better know. You better figure that one out, okay? It allows you to take your gain from a real estate transaction and exchange it into similar type properties and pay no tax. And I learned early on that paying taxes was the biggest hole in my financial boat. Like, there is no investment you will make, likely, that will ever make you enough money on a return to be bigger than paying 30 or 40 or 50% in taxes, right? You're lucky if you can get a consistent 8 or 9 or 10% annual return on a really good investment that's fairly safe, okay? But if you're paying 30, 40, 50% in income tax every year, that's a killer, right? So what you want to figure out, guys, is how to utilize legitimately, legally, the tax code to your advantage. You don't want to just go pay taxes. So just so you understand, the tax laws in America are set up to hammer employees, and they're set up to favor business owners. So if you're an employee and you get a W-2 form, you know, that's a problem, okay? You don't want to get a big W-2 form all the time. You'd rather have your own business where you can deduct your expenses, write off your car, put money away in your own retirement plan, all the stuff that business owners get to do. They get 1099 income. So think about figuring out in your life how you can get 1099 income and get as little W-2 income as possible, okay? So we exchanged that into apartments in Texas and Georgia. We bought 1,200 apartment units, spent $150 million buying these apartments. And we just sold all of those in the last year, and we exchanged again. Did a second exchange because we didn't want to pay the taxes on all that gain. So we had to do another exchange, okay? And I know people that have done 8 or 9 exchanges, and they've just compounded their money. It's like before the tax code, you guys. Back in the 1930s, the Carnegies and Rockefellers could make so much money because there was no income tax in the United States before that time. There was no IRS, okay? So today, the only ways you can build capital without paying that is, you know, real estate exchanges are a great one to do it. If you start a company and you own the stock, then you're going to get favorable treatment on that stock. You've got a really low basis. It'll be all gain when you sell it, but you can get such multiples if you have a successful company that it's okay to pay the tax. What's the long-term capital gains tax right now? How much? Oh, come on, you guys are in business? Oh, you've never paid any taxes yet? Well, you will soon.
It depends on your tax bracket, right?
No, it doesn't depend on your tax bracket. No, long-term capital gains, federal tax is 20%. It's 5% state, and it's 3.8% Obamacare for federal health care that Obama put in place. So if you sell your stock, for every dollar that you sell it, if you have almost no basis in it, you're going to pay almost 30% in taxes, okay? Now, what I've noticed around the country right now is all these kids your age are a little bit enamored with socialism. And that enamoring will go to zero as soon as you have a job and you look at your first pay stub and realize how much money you paid in taxes. If you've never had a job and paid taxes yet, you don't get it, okay? You're clueless. And once you get your first job and you all of a sudden go, wow, where did that 30, 40% go? I thought I was going to make this much. Oh no, those are all your taxes for health care, for state tax, for federal tax, okay? Capitalism is the greatest system that has ever been devised on the face of the planet to lift humanity out of poverty. We live in the best times we've ever lived in the history of this world, you guys. So don't listen to AOC in Washington, D.C. that is clueless, doesn't even know what she's talking about, hardly ever had a job herself and gets elected to Congress, okay? Or people that want to like give free education to everybody. It's not the real world, guys. All this stuff costs money. These lights cost money, this heat costs money, everything costs money, okay? We live in a society, and I'm just telling you right now that what I see from people that are successful entrepreneurs is you can't consume that much yourself, okay? After you have a beach house and you've got your main house and you've got nice cars and maybe even you got your own airplane, okay? After that, there's not that much stuff to buy. So what you want to do after that is you want to give back and you want to help. And I look at people like Warren Buffett, who's put out the Giving Pledge, where all these billionaires, hundreds of them, almost 1,000 now, have pledged to give away all their fortune before they're dead. Okay, and what do they give it to? They give it to great charitable causes that lift people out of poverty, that train people, that help people that are drug addicts get really fixed through real programs that work. You know, like Charles Koch. People like malign the Koch brothers. Charles Koch is trying to give away $500 million a year. He's 83. He's worth $60 billion. He's trying to give away like $500 million a year. He's trying to do good, you know. He's trying to like, how do I make sure this goes in the right places? So capitalism is what changes things. Socialism has been tried and failed so many times in so many countries. Okay, it does not work. There's no sense in going back to failed things that we've, seen failed so many times. Okay, is capitalism perfect? No, it's not perfect. No system's exactly perfect, but it's by far the best system we've ever had to be able to make sure that we can lift people. People go, well, you're trying to avoid taxes. You're dang right I am, because I think I can do a lot better job giving to places that can help people than the federal government does. Okay, I'd rather direct my own money to charities and help people in the way that I believe, and I can monitor it and I can measure their results. Just like you guys measure a business, I'm going to measure the charities that get money from us to make sure they're not wasting it. They're performing, they're hitting their targets, because every activity can get better. Okay, can always improve, and that's the same thing you can do in charitable giving as well. So this was a spectacular failure. I was in Israel, and I went to dinner with these guys, and they pitched me on this new endodontic device. So endodontics is where they will drill holes in your crown when your tooth has failed, or in your root, and they'll put a new crown on the top of your tooth, and that's how they fix a bad abscess tooth, right? Well, the only way people have been doing it all these years is they had just a round little drill, and they just bore a hole down your canals of your teeth. And that's not the way the anatomy of your roots of your tooth work. They're turn, they curve, they change, Sometimes they fork. And it's really tough for those endodontists to clean out all that infection that's in your roots of your teeth when you have an abscessed tooth. And that's why 90% of root canals fail within 2 or 3 years. And you're back in the dentist chair going, how come that thing's killing me again? Because they never got all the infection out the first time before they capped it and stuck your crown on. Okay, so these guys had a flexible hollow file. It was made out of material they make heart stents out of. And if you've never been to Israel, Israel's the startup capital of the world. Everybody over there is taught in entrepreneur schools that you need to fail 20 times. Doesn't matter how much money you waste, raise all the money you can, and just fail as fast as you can. In Israel, it's a badge of honor if you fail 10 times. Okay, in America, people get scared. Oh, you failed? You're a failure? No, that's how you learn. Is you got to make mistakes and you got to fail. Well, we failed on this one, but it was a really cool technology. I went to the biggest supplier of endodontic tools in the world in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, called Dentsply. $5 billion market cap, and I grabbed the guy who was the VP of sales and I said, look at this device. We've got all the patents on it. You guys own the market. We're going to develop this, and it's going to hurt you bad. Those guys ended up saying, we'll pay you $60 million for that invention. And I went back to the board in Israel, and they said, no, we're not interested. Idiots, right? They should have taken that exit, and they should have let Dentsply do all the R&D and finish it off instead of them trying to fund it, right? And that we ended up putting money in, more money, and eventually they couldn't sell it. The market kind of moved away from us, and we lost a lot of money on that company. It went bankrupt. That was an ugly thing. So the next thing we did is we went and we said to ourselves, after Mill Rock, where's the next place that's going to explode in Utah? Where do we want to own property? And so we made the biggest investment we bet we'd ever made, and we bought 120 acres from the Ashton family, the guys that did Word Perfect up there, and sold it for $1 billion to Novell. And they set up Thanksgiving Point as their gift to the community. And they put in the Dinosaur Museum and the big water tower off I-15 and all the attractions, the golf course and everything. All that stuff just costs money. It doesn't make money, right? And so they're trying to fund it and sell memberships and stuff, and they're writing $2 million a year checks, red ink, losing money, trying to keep the golf course green and the lawn mowed and everybody happy up there, right? And so they said, we're going to sell off some land. And we just were lucky. We were there at the right time, and they went and talked to 4 or 5 developers. They liked what we did at Mill Rock, and they said, we'll let you guys bid on this. And we won it. So we bought this land, and all of a sudden, 2006 is when we put out the money. And 2007 and 2008, the Great Recession hits. Lehman goes bankrupt, right? All of a sudden, the whole economy craters. Almost the whole world went down in 2008, 2009. And so, we're sitting there. We'd started a building. It was out of the ground. We signed a $30 million construction loan personally. So that makes you pucker a little bit when it's like the whole economy craters, right? And so we're sitting there going, we're praying, like we got to find the right tenants. All of a sudden, Microsoft shows up. Microsoft goes, we're going to put an office in Utah, and we need a LEED certified building. Who knows what LEED is? Leadership in Energy Design and Development, right? So it's a green building. It like saves energy and stuff. Right at the last minute, we decided to make it a LEED building. Well, they show up, and their new charter to their shareholders is we're a green company, so we got to have a green building. We had the only green building in Utah at the time that they could lease, so we got them. And as soon as Microsoft's name went on the building, everybody's like, what are they doing in Lehi? There's nothing in Lehi. And all of a sudden, Adobe showed up, and they go, we want to buy the rest of your land. And we said, not for sale. They went across the street, bought that land, and built that cool building they built. And all of a sudden, all these tech companies start showing up, and Silicon Slopes takes off, right? That's what it looked like in 2006. All you had was the water tower right there, and a little teeny movie theater that had 3 screens. There's 16 now, right? And all the rest of it was just dirt. There was a little chevron and an iceberg on the corner. We bought that, scraped it, put a building up there, right? So that's what it looks like today. So we build all these buildings up here, then we build all these buildings down here, and this is the 120 acres that we bought way back when, Great frontage right on I-15, right between 2 exits, and it's been a long road. It's been 14 years now since we bought that property, but it's been really, really good. We've done really well. You might have seen some of our buildings. That's the Vivint Solar building. That's the Nuvi DigiCert building, MX. Top fintech company, $1 billion valuation. So because of that, then all of a sudden we had amazing failure. We started talking to these guys that had some spots on the front runner or the track station in Sandy, Utah. So Utah Transit Authority owned the land. Another developer that we knew had the master development agreement, but they didn't know how to build office buildings like we do. So they came to us and said, would you guys be interested in partnering with us and building some office buildings over here? We said, sure, happy to do it. So we go to work, we design these buildings, we meet with the city council, the mayor, we meet with the planning commission, we think this is all gonna be good. We go to get approval that night, and 200 citizens show up, and they're like, we hate these buildings, they're gonna block our view, we don't want this. And all of a sudden the planning commission got like shaky, like, oh my gosh, look at the lynch mob. And so all of a sudden they just said, no, well, we're gonna vote no. So we got denied. We thought we had the thing greased. We thought this is gonna be approved for sure. These are beautiful buildings. And so they deny us. We're like, we've never been denied. How does that happen? So we got our butts kicked. And we spent all this money on these designs. And so the next morning my phone rings, and it's our architect, and he said, you need to meet these guys. And these guys were across the freeway from Sandy in South Jordan, Utah. And we went and met with the city, and they said, we want you to bring these buildings over here. Well, UTA had another property there, the Front Runner Station, on the west side of I-15, and it was all a parking lot. And the UTA guy said, we'll contribute the land, but we got to replace the parking. We got to park 500 cars a day here for people that ride the train. They come and do the park and ride here. And so we went to the city, and the city said, we'll put up $14 million to build parking structures if you guys will build the buildings that you were going to build in Sandy, but you build them here. And so we said, all right, that works. Why would the city do that? Why would they go out and borrow $14 million and put it into parking structures that we could put our buildings on top of. Why would they do it? How much tax value was the city collecting on property taxes when that property was owned by UTA? Government entity, zero. Government entities don't pay any tax. This building sitting right here is worth a lot of money. If it wasn't a government entity, it'd be paying a lot of property tax to Iron County. They get zero tax off this campus, okay? So we took a government property that had no tax base. The city invested $14 million. We put on about $150 million of buildings and a hotel, and all of a sudden it went on the tax rolls. And now the county and the school district and the city starts to collect all this tax back every year now because we put it on the tax rolls. They're collecting a couple $1 million a year of property tax now. So they go, well, we can pay $14 million, and in 7 years at $2 million a year, we'll have the $14 million back in our bank, and we'll get paid that money forever. That's a good investment, isn't it? Yeah, really good investment. Well, most cities don't get that. They don't get how to spur economic development, but South Jordan City got it. And so they found guys like us that were willing to invest the money and take the risk, and we built these beautiful buildings like Lucid Charts there in Moment. Ivanti took the second building. These are beautiful buildings. They won Best of State again, 2017. All right, so another thing happened. So back in 2000, we lived in Santa Clara, Utah for a few years, and I was involved in Nuskin, and I was just taking a little bit of a break because I'd been working really hard, so I stepped back for a little bit. And of course, my mind's working, and I'm thinking, how come they're selling electricity for so much money in Southern California? So this was way back before you guys were probably born, but back in 2003, 4, okay? Actually 2001, 2002. So the electricity prices in California were spiking. They were $350 a megawatt instead of $35 a megawatt. The price is 10 times higher than it should be. So I'm looking at this aberration in the electricity market, and so I figure out, I call Utah Municipal Electrical System. It's an electrical cooperative up in Utah County, and I called them and I said, if I can generate electricity, what would you guys pay me per megawatt? They go, well, we'll pay you $350 a megawatt. That's the going price during the peak hours when everybody turns on their air conditioning. And I'm like, okay, how do I do this? I don't know anything about electricity. So I call Wheeler Machinery in Salt Lake City, and I find out I can rent these 1.5 megawatt diesel generators, and I can rent them for $25,000 a month. So then I just got to find a place to put these generators. So I'm talking to all these cities that have their own power companies, and nobody's wanting to talk to me. And I finally talked to the folks out in Hilldale, Utah, Colorado City, and they're part of UAMPS. They connect to the UAMPS grid. They've got their own power company. They let me put 2 of those big generators, 1.5 megawatts each, so I can generate 3 megawatts for 8 hours a day. I put this 10,000 gallon diesel tank next to it. I hooked the whole thing up. I didn't do it, I hired these guys to do it. And so every day when they got hot, I'd crank those things up for 8 hours. I would sell that at $350 a megawatt into the UAMPS grid, and they would pay me every 2 weeks, and I was making $30,000 a month selling juice. And at the end of the summer, all of a sudden the prices crashed. I was on a month-to-month on those generators from Wheeler Machinery, big Caterpillar machinery. So I just said, I'm done, turned them back in, walked away, made $220,000 during the summer. So that was my first foray into electricity, and I didn't know anything about it, but I just started diving in. Well, all of a sudden I started learning about electricity, and I learned about megawatts and what the pricing was. And I'm the landlord for Vivint Solar up in Lehigh, and they're leasing our building from us. And so I get to know these guys, and all of a sudden I hear that this company, Sun Edison, big, huge renewable company, is going to buy Vivint Solar. So I'm looking at Sun Edison, I'm going, man, their books look really ugly. They're really, really leveraged. They got a lot of debt. Well, sure enough, their stock starts going down, and they go bankrupt. They don't even complete the buy of Vivint Solar, thank goodness, right? And so they go bankrupt. So I start looking in their bankruptcy, and I find out they've got 3 small-scale solar projects in Cedar City, Utah, that are hanging out in New York bankruptcy court. And so I negotiate with the bankruptcy trustee to buy the rights for 3 of these solar fields. The only problem is they've got a power purchase agreement from 2013, and it's now 2016. Well, the solar prices, right, electricity prices are coming down like crazy, right? Because solar's getting more efficient and everything. So these 2013 contracts are at a really nice price. I could never get that price again today, right? And the contracts are with Rocky Mountain Power, who's owned by Pacificorp, who's owned by Berkshire Energy, which is part of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett. So that's a really good credit. I know they're always going to be able to pay me. They signed a 20-year agreement to buy that power for 20 years. So here's these contracts. I called Pacificorp. I said, hey, I just bought these contracts. I want to bring them online. They said, you better hurry. You got 6 months. And if you don't make it, we hope you don't. We don't want to pay that price. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I grab all the contractors that Sun Edison had lined up. I get the land leases out here, just west of town out here. And we scramble, and we go like crazy people, and we made it by 5 days. 5 days on one of them, like 9 days on the other two. And so I slipped in under the wire. Those 2013 contracts were valid. They had to pay that high price. They didn't like it, but they had to. And so they're just out here generating every day. Nice day like this, they're cranking out a lot of power right now. And so that was another interesting little thing. What time do we need to end? Am I over time?
20, so you got a few minutes.
A couple minutes, okay. Sorry, I was hoping we were going to have like question and answer time. Anyway, there's some of those solar fields. And then last thing that we've been getting into the last 5 years is there's a huge need for affordable housing. Housing prices are going up. People can't afford to even rent apartments hardly anymore. The rents keep going up, right? So we're trying to figure out where's affordable housing. Well, I don't want to just go do government-funded affordable housing because I don't believe in the dole, okay? So what I'm looking at is like, where is affordable housing? So there's a lot of manufactured housing communities in this country, most of which were built back in the 70s and 80s. Today, cities and counties don't want to approve manufactured housing anymore, these communities, because they think they're kind of low-life communities and they attract the wrong people and they don't want them in their city. And if they could put an apartment complex on, they'd get a lot more property tax anyway, right? Well, the problem is these parks are getting destroyed and 200-300 people just get displaced. Like they tell them, take your trailer and move somewhere else because we're going to redevelop this into an apartment complex. It's really disruptive. It like ruins lots of people's lives. A lot of times there's no place they can even take the trailer because they're not making any more of these parks. So it's a tough, tough situation. So we decided, hey, these parks are really good cash flow. They're a good investment. They're a good return. So we started buying these parks to preserve them. Not to destroy them, but to actually preserve them. And you guys probably don't know, but manufactured housing houses around 10 million people in this country. And it's one of the most affordable forms of housing out there. Because when you make a house in a factory, you can make it in a week. Climate-controlled conditions, the house comes out in 2 halves on a trailer, they drag it down the road and they put it together. I challenge anybody to go take a stick-built house that's built on a concrete foundation somewhere in your city and put that on a trailer and drive it 80 miles an hour down the road and see if any of it gets to the destination. These houses that are built in the factory are built really well, actually. They're really good houses. And they're way cheaper than stick building them on site, right? And so what we did, we said, okay, we're going to preserve these communities. We're going to make people, a place they can live that is affordable for them. And so we go into these communities, and all in, we try to be about $200 a month less than the average 2-bedroom apartment in the same area. Okay, and that's all in, paying us for the pad that the home sits on, plus paying their mortgage on their mobile home. Okay, all together it's $200 a month less than paying rent in an apartment. And guess what? They get a drive up next to their own door. They don't got to haul groceries up 3 flights of stairs. Nobody's jumping on their ceiling at midnight playing music. They got their own 4 walls. There's a lot to like about living in these communities, And so what we're doing this now. We've bought 16,000 pads in the last 4 years, and we put in money, and I go to friends of mine, and we just raise funds, and we deploy a fund about every year, and there's great tax advantages to this. So this is one other reason I got attracted to it. So in the 2018 Jobs Act, the new tax law that Trump got passed in 2018, there's a little provision in there that says that 15-year life property can take advantage of the 100% bonus depreciation. Now what that means is we go in and we buy a park for $10 million, And we cost segregate. So we look at the roads, the utilities, the water, power, sewer, gas, the street lights, the mailbox house. We look at all the engineered pads that the actual mobile homes sit on. All those things are improvements to the actual dirt. We can take the total value of the improvements and we can write them off the first year we buy it. 100% bonus depreciation first year. So we buy a $10 million park, guess what we do? We get a $7 million tax write-off. Okay? So we pass that through to our investors and they go, wow, so we can make a good return on this property, but all of our income's tax-free until we exhaust that first year tax loss. It goes for like 8 or 9 years. So they're getting a great return tax-free as an incentive to preserve affordable housing. This is the only non-government subsidized affordable housing in America. So it's important piece, and it's important to preserve it. Okay, I think we're done. We're out of time, right? That's what they look like. They're pretty nice communities. Doesn't that look okay? Yeah, that's not what you think. Landon mentioned my beautiful wife. That's her just snowmobiling a few weeks ago. And she's right here on the front row. Raise your hand, honey. There you go. And there's 12 of the 13. They were all lined up at Christmas. You have to zoom in close to see the guy that's holding this one up. See? He's hiding behind him. Anyway, that's our family. And that's the most important part. So you can work hard, you can take a lot of risk. If you're going to get married, make sure your spouse is ready for the roller coaster if you're going to be an entrepreneur. Lots of ups and lots of downs, but it's really good. It's that part of life where you do, really good things happen and some bad things happen, but you're living life. You're experiencing life, right? You're not huddled with those poor, timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat, right? Anyway, thanks much.
One thing that stands out that he said was if you're really careful,
Nothing really good or nothing really bad.
Nothing really bad will happen. And this is not a careful man, because he's done an enormous amount of good. Affordable housing, solar energy, building beautiful structures, selling vitamins that make people healthier. We're really grateful for Nathan Ricks, and we'd like to present you with the Cedar Award.
Oh, great.
It's made from cedar wood, and we hope when
Awesome.
you return
Thank
to
you.
check on your solar farms.